Hello, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for being with us today. We are back with Allison Schaberg. Thank you, Allison, for being with us today. But before I introduce her, we are going to talk a little bit about Partner Research Network. My name is Veronica Alvarez, and I'm the Regional 13 Coordinator for Partner Research Network. Partner Research Network is the Parent Training and Information Centers for Texas. The acronym is PTI. And we are funded by the Department of Education, Office of Special Education, to provide free resources and training for parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities that we call themselves advocates. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. Who we serve? Parents of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities from the ages 0 to 26 years old. Where we serve in all the state of Texas. Partner Research Network was first founded in 1986. And now we have 4 projects serving parents here in 4 projects serving parents. So we are part of the team project. I think we have a hand raise. Allison, is my voice okay? You're listening to my presentation?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
I think we're
awesome.
okay.
Yes, I was receiving a phone call and then I see a hand raised. I said, oh, maybe something is wrong. All right. So I'm part of the team project, guys. But if you don't, I'm in Austin and in surrender areas. If you don't know your regional coordinator, please let me know and I can send you that information. Our services are free and we offer parent workshops, youth workshops, webinars, information and referrals, one-on-one technical assistance, supporting the IEP meetings and our meetings. We do once a year a symposium. We offer parent leadership training, youth leadership training, and access to social media resources. For today, if you have a question, please type it in the chat box or in the Q&A, and we can answer your questions. Your microphone and your video camera is off for this presentation. And later on, we are going to share with you guys a link for a YouTube channel that Consolidated Planning Group has. And also we also share our presentation in our Facebook pages. At the end of the presentation, you are going to receive a link with a survey. Please help us with that. It's only going to take you 1 or 2 minutes to fill it out. It's an evaluation of today's presentation. And please help us with your honest feedback. That helps us with, to better serve you guys. We do not provide CEUs, but we can do a certificate of attendance. If you need one, please type it in the chat box or send me an email and I can do that for you. Again, this is my contact information. I'm Veronica Alvarez. That's my phone number and email. I also put that information in the chat box if you need it. And please visit our main webpage at www.prntexas.org. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And now we are going to listen to the class with Allison. Today, she's going to be talking about government benefits one-on-one. And Consolidated Planning Group is a financial company that has a lot of experience working with families with special healthcare needs. Allison, she's been working, she's a founder of Consolidated Planning Group, and she's been working with families with special healthcare needs since more than 30 years. She also is a mother of 2 children, young adults with disabilities, and she has a lot of experience. And we love her, having her. He has a lot of knowledge and about a lot of topics, but she's going to talk more about it. So welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Veronica. It's always a pleasure to be back with you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're going from 12 to 1 today, so if you're planning your lunch, you can plan on that. And as she mentioned, later today, we'll post our slides and the recording on our YouTube channel. They'll post it on their page, and you guys will get an email with a copy of today's slides, so you don't have to take notes on everything. As she said, I'm Allison Schaberg, Consolidated Planning Group. We are a holistic special needs financial planning firm, and we are happy to partner with families all across the U.S., not just in Texas, to share resources as it relates to planning for special needs. So today, this is a topic that is confusing to many, and there's a lot of reasons that it's confusing, and it's not because you're crazy. It's because some of the terms that we start throwing around when we start talking about government benefits, some of them sound the same, but they're very, very different. And so we're going to talk about the different types of programs that are out there and how they might be beneficial to your family. So we talk about SSI. We hear about SSI all the time, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. Along with SSI comes Medicaid. And then there's SSDI, which stands for Social Security Disability, RSDI, which is Retirement Survivors Disability. And then after 24 months, that comes with Medicare. So I'm going to start by explaining, and even if this is kind of like elementary to you, I want to start at the beginning so that way there's no confusion on the different programs out there. So SSI and Medicaid, this is a means test, and what SSI is for the disabled and the indigent, okay? So the decision on whether an individual with a disability is indigent depends on the assets that they have. So the first thing that you have to know, even though a lot of our kids are clearly disabled, but that's just it, they're a kid, they're not over age 18. So prior to our children turning age 18, when the Social Security Administration is conducting their means-based tests, they're looking at the parent's assets and income, not the child. So if your child is under age 18, they're looking at your household assets and income, not the child. So that is the reason why many families do not qualify for SSI and Medicaid, even though their child does indeed have a disability. So that means-based test, what they're looking at is basically $2,000 in assets. There are some different qualifications if you're married, if there's two parents, if it's a child and one parent. But the basic number that you mainly need to know is the $2,000 assets in your name. In all cases, you can have one house and one car. Your house could be worth $10 million. It doesn't matter how much your house is worth. You could have a Maserati. Doesn't matter how much your car is worth. You can have one house and one car. It's not considered a countable asset. So right now for 2022, the amount for SSI is $841 per month. If you have a loved one that is getting SSI and they're not working and they're not getting $841 a month and they're getting something along the lines of $561 a month, you are being reduced for food and shelter. And if you submit a rent agreement, then they will increase that benefit to the full benefit amount of $841 a month. For 2023, that number is $914 per month. So it's going to be going up in January of 2023 to $914. So SSI and Medicaid. So a lot of times people say, yeah, my kid gets Social Security, when in fact your child is not getting Social Security. They're getting supplemental security income, which is a big difference than getting Social Security. So Social Security is a system that we pay into. It's based off of a work record. Tax is paid into the Social Security system. If you've ever looked at your Social Security statement, if you've worked, you have quarters. Every quarter we work, we're earning credits with the Social Security Administration, and those credits are towards SSDI, Social Security Disability, and they're also for Social Security, which is also known as Social Security Retirement, okay? So this is where the confusion comes in, because SSDI, just a name in itself, Social Security Disability Income, it would only make sense that if our child has a disability that they would qualify for SSDI. But that's really not how the system works. And a lot of our kids have never paid into the system. So SSDI, Social Security, is a worker-based system. You pay into the system. SSI is a disabled and indigent, and basically it's a means-based test for income and assets. Okay, so with SSDI, so in the example, you're the worker, you're the parent, and you become disabled, you turn on your SSDI, and then after 24 months comes along with Medicare, okay? There are other programs, our children, and we're going to talk more about this, our children whose disability started prior to age 22 do have the ability to be covered under a parent's record, basically for SSDI, if the parent is retired or on Social Security disability themselves. So we are going to talk more about that. So SSI comes along with Medicaid. SSDI is a system that we pay into. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this presentation today. And as Veronica said, if you guys have questions today, just put them in the chat box. She is going to be monitoring that chat box for us, and we'll answer just as many questions as we can. So when should you apply, and what do you need to apply for? So, on this previous slide, it is pointless. Okay, if your assets are over this amount and on this left-hand side, and your child is a minor, it is pointless to apply for SSI and Medicaid that comes along with SSI, because you are going to be denied, because you are going to fail the means-based test. So you can save yourself a lot of time and energy by not applying if you're over that asset amount, okay? But that changes. So whenever the child turns 18, it's based off of their assets and income, not yours. Even if you have guardianship, even if they still live in your house, it's based off of them once they turn 18. So we suggest applying for SSI the month of your child's 18th birthday. We suggest doing it after the actual birthday. So if their birthday is November 15th, I would do it not on November 15th, but the 16th or after is when I would apply. If you're going to go into the office, we always recommend that you schedule an appointment. You can call to schedule your appointment a few months ahead of the birthday, meaning if the birthday is November 15th, maybe you call in September to schedule that appointment for November 16th or after. Okay, again, we don't want the appointment prior to that 18th birthday. If you go in prior to the 18th birthday, there's going to be an error. They're going to take your assets and income. They're going to deny the kid, and you're going to have to go through the whole process over again. So that's if you want to do it in person, which you can do it in person. They also have an online tool where you can request that you're wanting to apply for SSI. And I like the online tool because it's going to save your date. So when you go in there, so in that example of November 15th, you go in November 16th to apply for your loved one, it's going to save that date. And once they get approved, they're going to go ahead and back pay to that date that you locked in. Usually when you go through the online system, within a couple of weeks, they're going to schedule an appointment for you, which they can schedule that in person, or they can schedule a phone appointment, and you can be the judge of which one is sooner and which one you want to do. But as you're getting ready to apply for SSI, so one thing that you need to think about is that means-based test that we were talking about, that $2,000. So they are going to look at your student to find out how much money they have. So if you have a loved one that has more than $2,000 in their name and you're planning on applying for SSI, you're going to want to make sure that they don't have more than $2,000 in their name outside of an ABLE account or a special needs trust, because the application will be denied. So one question I get pretty regularly is, if my kid has more than $2,000, can I just move it into my name? And that's really not the right way to go about doing it. And there is a look back, and they will see it. it is completely, a legitimate move to move money that is in the kid's account to an ABLE account for their benefit or to a special needs trust. So that's one way. Another way that you can get below that $2,000 limit is to spend down that money for the individual's care, whatever that care might be. So is it food and shelter? Is it therapy, co-pays, medicine? It could be a car, it could be adaptive equipment, it could be anything, but you just, if you're spending down to get under that $2,000, you are going to want to make sure that you have proof of those receipts and what you spent it down for. You also want to have evidence that demonstrates that the child's disability began prior to age 22 to be able to qualify for childhood disability benefits, which was formerly called Disabled Adult Child, or DAC, on one of the parents' records, okay? So we're going to talk about that program in a minute. But because some kids with a disability may not ever be able to work, if their disability started prior to age 22, they have the ability to be covered under a parent's record for SSDI. And this is, when a parent turns on their Social Security or Social Security disability is when those benefits will kick in, and we're going to talk more about it. So getting ready for your application, one thing I did, and I feel like it was helpful and helped me be organized, I just created a folder on my computer and just labeled it SSI, and I slid the documents in that I wanted to have in there. So that way I was prepared for my appointment. So some of the things that you can do to be prepared for your appointment is have the medical history, diagnosis history and dates, names, address, and phone numbers of the physicians. And when I'm speaking of physicians, I'm speaking of your PCP, the child's PCP, any specialist that they see. If they see a neurologist, a cardiologist, a hematologist, whoever they see, psychiatrist, psychologist, any of the medical doctors that they have a significant history with, I would have the names, address, and phone numbers of each one of those doctors, because the Social Security Administration is going to go out and get those records. You're going to have to sign a release, and they're going to get those records. You're also going to want to have a list of any medications that the child takes. They don't really care about the dosages, but they want to know the names of the medications and what they are for. So again, I just created this on a Word document, slid it into my folder, so that way I was ready for the appointment. Another thing that they're going to need is they're going to look for 3 months of the bank statements, okay? And they're going to ask you intricate details of the bank statements. So it's my opinion, you don't absolutely have to do this. It's my opinion that you have a special account, account specifically for the SSI to go into, as opposed to commingled with the family's funds. It's easier and cleaner. And when you're getting SSI and it's a means-based program, they do come back from time to time, every few years, and ask for banking information and stuff like that. So if you have just a straight up account that is designed for this SSI to go into, that's kind of an easy way to go. And again, the kid can have an account. The account, their altogether means just can't be over $2,000. So that's just one thing I would say there. I would also consider, as you're getting ready before you apply, I would also consider chatting with the PCP first and letting them know that you're going to be applying for SSI and Medicaid, and that they're going to send a record request, and just take a look and see what they have in their records. Does the record clearly indicate what the diagnoses are and what the limitations or the problems are, or the issues are with the diagnosis? Because the clearer the record is, in general, we typically don't want bad things in our medical records, or our kids' medical records for that matter. But in general, when we're going and we're applying for SSI, we need those medical records to be clear of the diagnosis, clear of the limitations, clear of everything that needs to be there. So you might want to just take a peek at that. Most doctors went to digital medical records, 15 or 20 years ago. Sometimes there's mistakes in those, and those mistakes we've actually even seen where people have been denied. So just taking a peek at first, and if there's anything wrong, asking the doctor to make those corrections it will expedite your process as you're going along. Veronica, do we have some questions?
Yes, we do have some questions in the Q&A area. The first one is a little bit long. It says, my son is 21, gets SSIs, and he works. I've been told that SSDI will be easier to manage. Records with IRWE. It's hard for me to figure out from the SSI website when to predict that he will be eligible for SSDI. I'm trying to plan for more independent living situation for him, but I can tell if or when SSDI could help. How many credits does he need to accumulate as someone who was disabled before he started employment?
Okay, that is a very loaded question, and it is a good one. So let me start at the beginning and then kind of work my way up through it. So first things first, there is something that you can request through the Social Security Administration called an earned income exclusion. This is specifically for students, people that are still going to school full time, and they're between the ages of 18 to 22. Okay, that's the magic age, 18 to 22, and it's called an earned income exclusion. So if your student, if your son is a student, or you have a student between age 18 and 22, you need to ask for the earned income exclusion, and then their SSI will not be reduced. SSI is generally reduced for work, okay? And basically how this works, let me just give you an example. So for example, let's say that the individual makes, let's just say they make $500. Okay, so they make $500 gross earnings in the month. Okay, because you have to report those earnings monthly. So they make $500. If they're working, they're not going to count the first $85. So $415 would be counted. That amount would be divided by 2. And then that is the amount that they would subtract from the SSI. So they would get their SSI minus that amount divided by 2. Okay, so that's how it works if you're not getting an earned income exclusion. An earned income exclusion is something you have to ask for, and quite honestly, they don't usually remind you to apply for that. So it is something, and there are such things as work-related expenses. So you can look at the work-related expenses, and I think she was talking about that, like it could be travel. There's various work-related expenses that if you submit those, then they won't subtract that against your SSI. So like if the person doesn't drive and they have to take the bus or they have to take Uber, and those would be work-related expenses. Okay, so whether or not SSI or SSDI is better, okay, I don't know that there's a perfect answer for that. Sometimes SSDI is going to be more, okay, if they're under a parent's record. For instance, if a parent is getting $3,000 a month and the child is considered a disabled adult child or, approved for childhood disability benefits, if the parent's getting $3,000, that child would get $1,500. So it's, the math is clear that $841 and $1,500 is definitely better, right? But in all cases, so I think what some people are saying is that when you switch over to SSDI after 24 months, you get Medicare, which is true. And so they're saying it doesn't matter anymore and you don't have to pay attention to the means-based test. And I would disagree with you on that because for most of us, we want to keep our kids Medicaid eligible in the state because all of the waivers in the state of Texas are Medicaid waivers. So you have to stay Medicaid eligible. So even if they flip over to SSDI and their income is higher, you still want to maintain Medicaid eligibility by keeping their assets under $2,000. So if you have somebody that is super affluent, they've got millions of dollars that are going to fund the special needs trust, and they don't care about Medicaid and they don't care about ever getting a waiver, then that may be the case. So in this example, and we can take this one offline, but in this example, I agree that we want our kids to work. We want them to thrive and to move themselves forward and work if they can and work as much as they can. but and we're going to talk about this in just a second. There's a blue book and a red book, and we're going to talk about those blue books and the red books with the Social Security Administration. You can look at them online, but it talks about what happens when we're working. And the main thing, and there's 3 phases, but they can lose their disabled adult child or eligibility for childhood disability benefits if you're not careful. And so I think from a family perspective, you have to decide what's best for your loved one. Some families are sure that their child is never going to have a substantial work record under their own, and so they don't want them to lose their childhood disability benefit option, right? But other families are hopeful and optimistic. And so in this case where your son is working, he could be getting SSDI, and you can look up the work credits needed per age. It goes based off of age, and they're like 4 or 5 year increments. So I don't know exactly what it is for 21. I don't remember if it's 4 or 8 credits that you need at 21 to be able to get SSDI under his own record. But there is a company, it's called Imagine Enterprises. You may have heard of WIPA. And that what they do is they kind of work with the Social Security Administration. So if you have a loved one that is getting benefits and they're working and you're trying not to mess it up, you're trying to optimize the benefits, but we're also trying our hand at getting to work, like maybe they're in VR or whatever, WIPA will work with you for free and will kind of talk you through what he can make and what he can't make and how not to lose those benefits and that type of thing. So I hope that answers your question. It was kind of a loaded question, and it gets it starts getting very confusing when we start adding working in and whether or not they're getting SSI and working or they're getting SSD and working, because there are 2 different sets of rules depending on what program the individual is getting paid under. Okay, so we'll talk about that in just a moment. The Social Security Blue Book, and Veronica, I'll take that next question in just a second. The Social Security Blue Book is basically a medical impairment guide that the Social Security uses to determine whether a person is disabled in the eyes of the Social Security system. The Blue Book is something that you can go online and look. You can literally put in your Google search Social Security Blue Book, and here's the link for it as well. But and you can look up every diagnosis. So if you're thinking about applying, you can look up every diagnosis that your loved one has, and in that book, it's going to tell you what evidence is going to need to be provided to be able to determine that your loved one is in fact disabled. Okay, so the Social Security Blue Book is a good thing. So when we talked about reaching out to your PCP to see what was in their record, I would peek at the Blue Book first. I might even take a printout of this is the evidence that needs to be clear in the medical record for disability, and have that discussion with your physician. So this is your friend. You can look at this for free. It's all out there, the Social Security Blue Book. There is a whole bunch of conditions out there that there is something called a compassionate allowance for, which means it's a presumptive condition. So it means in the eyes of the Social Security, this individual has a presumptive condition that we presume that the individual is disabled even before the application is approved. The normal application process for SSI, it could take 3 to 6 months, and that's being honest. The Disability Determination Unit in Austin, they're backed up right now, probably a little bit understaffed, but definitely backed up. But there's a lot of conditions out there, and you can see if your loved one has a presumptive condition, some that stick out are the cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, Down syndrome, intellectual disability. There are some presumptive conditions, and when your child has a presumptive condition, they'll provide a compassionate allowance and basically start paying even up to before the application is actually even approved. So if there's a likelihood that the case is going to be approved, the DDS, which stands for Disability Determination Services, can also make a presumptive decision, okay? The determination is made typically by the local office, and up to 6 months of SSI can be paid before that application is even approved. Okay, Veronica, I'm ready for the next question.
All right. I answered one that we can apply SSI online. I put yes. We have another one. What do you mean about a child could have two banks accounts, one for SSI and one for his personal banking?
No, I don't mean two bank accounts for the kid. What I mean is a lot of our families, their child, they may have guardianship, or they may have an individual that has an intellectual disability that has no ability to interact with Social Security on the phone. And in that example, you as a parent are their representative payee. You call on their behalf. You work with the Social Security Administration. And so what I'm saying is I wouldn't commingle the child's SSI into your family's bank account. So if like a husband and wife has a joint bank account, I wouldn't have the SSI going into that joint bank account. I would have a specific account earmarked for SSI. So that's what I mean by that. Now, if the kid already has a bank account, that bank account is fine. Okay, so you don't need a separate one on top of that. Thank you for asking that question, and so I could clarify that.
My daughter is receiving childhood disability benefits, but not the SSI. Can she qualify for both benefits?
No. So if she's getting childhood disability benefits because the parent is either retired or disabled, she wouldn't qualify. She wouldn't qualify. They would consider the childhood disability benefits. They'll take the higher of the two. Basically, is typically what they're going to do. But if she's a minor, again, the qualification. So even though the childhood disability benefits may not be that much, is $914 per month. Because if she's a minor, they're going to look at the assets and income of the household, not hers. So it's not likely she would flip over from SSDI over to SSI.
They're asking about WIPA. You can spell that, or we can share the resource. So we have it later on.
I'm just gonna go ahead and give it to you. Imagine Enterprises runs WIPA, WIPA. And an 800 number for them is 866-968-7842. 866-968-7842. And so they, on these challenging questions, like when, and we get these questions all the time, and we can help. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors. But some of these, like when we're getting in the weeds with some of the moving parts, and are they still under a parent's record? And there are a lot of ways that your child can work his way out of being a disabled adult child under a parent's record. So if they're working, that's where it becomes critical. If you don't want them to lose their status for childhood disability benefits in the future, then you need to know, what those moving parts are. And that's where WIPA is going to come into play. Do we have any additional questions at this time?
That's the last one, but I think you already have it in the slides. Which website do you apply at? I tried the SSA website, but it was for SSDI. I think you have to apply to SSS. You have it in the first slide, right?
We'll get the link. I don't think that link is in the first slide, but when we put the slides out to everybody later today, we'll add a link to that slide, so that way, because there's an electronic, it's called the electronic filing tool or something, and that electronic filing tool launched for SSI in April of 2022 this year. So it's a fresh new thing. Okay. So if it may have been, if you did it in the past, or maybe it's not there anymore, that it wasn't there when you looked, but it's there now. So we've been talking about this childhood disability benefits. So when a parent retires, becomes disabled, or passes away, and a parent has applied to receive their own Social Security benefits through retirement or disability, the disabled adult child, and I keep using that term DAC because the Social Security Administration used that term DAC, disabled adult child, for like 40 years. And then in the last 2 or 3 years, they've changed that name from DAC to Childhood Disability Benefits, or CDB. So just know this is where it starts getting confusing for folks, because we have these acronyms that we throw around, and some of them sound synonymous, and they're absolutely not. And some of them don't sound synonymous at all, but they absolutely are. So this is an example of that. But so basically, if our child's disability started prior to age 22, the child is eligible to be covered under a parent's record. And in that example, they would get 50% of the parent's benefits. So if we're clipping along, your child's getting SSI $841 a month, mom or dad retires. Mom or dad's retirement benefit under Social Security is $3,000 a month. Under this rule, your child would flip over from SSI basically to SSDI or SDI under a parent's record, and they would start getting $1,500 a month. So they wouldn't get SSDI and SSI in that example unless the SSDI is less than $900 and some odd a month, and then they might get a portion of both. So I have seen it where they could get a portion of both. And about once a year, for the kids that work, about once a year, I'll see a kid that is eligible for $1 of SSI, SSDI under his own record, and then the childhood disability benefits under a parent. It's very rare, but I've definitely seen that. So that's another example of one of those one-off cases. So once a child is under the childhood disability benefits under a parent's record, they're 18 and older, 24 months after receiving those Title II benefits, 18 and older, they'll be eligible for Medicare. Okay, so this does not apply to the minor. If there's a minor getting childhood disability benefits, that particular minor, when they turn 18, you're going to have to go through the process showing that the child still has a disability and that they should be able to continue childhood disability benefits under the parent's record. And once you go through that process after the 24 months has elapsed, then that child will be eligible for Medicare as well. So it's just not automatic, because if we have a person, a parent that passes away, all the minor children are covered for benefits, okay? It has nothing to do with their disability. It has to do with the parent passed away. So when they turn 18, we still have to prove that any remaining kids that have disabilities that started prior to age 22, so they can be covered under a parent's record. So when a parent passes away, the disabled child will be entitled to 75% of the deceased parent's Social Security. So they're clipping along, they get 50% of the parent's record, and if the parent passes away, the child is still disabled, it goes to 75%. So here's the thing that you've got to know. These numbers are not clear. We actually have a proprietary software that we use. It's the only software out there. It does a Social Security analysis, and it's the only software out there that takes into consideration a child eligible for childhood disability benefits. So this tells us exactly when and how to pull the trigger on your Social Security benefits to maximize benefits for the whole family. There is a such thing as family maximums. So in the example, there's a non-working spouse drawing from the spouse's record. These numbers are not exact because there is a family maximum, but our software is able to calculate that so you guys can make some good decisions. So Title 16 is the SSI program. Title II is the Social Security Retirement, RSDI, SSDI, CDB, DWB, is all under Title II. That's the program that we pay into, okay? This is not the means-based program. This is the program that we pay into. An adult receiving Title II benefits is considered a beneficiary. So to be entitled to SSDI, Social Security Disability, you file an application. You have to be found to be medically disabled, either fully insured, or again, you're covered under a parent's record because your disability started prior to age 22. And it's not working, earning more than the substantial gainful amount. So for 2022, the substantial gainful amount was $1,350 gross per month. The substantial gainful amount for 2023 is $1,470 gross per month. So for those of you that have a loved one that is working and you have not applied for SSI yet, you have to know that if prior to their application, if they've made more than the substantial gainful amount, that $1,470 for 2023 or $1,350 gross earnings per month for 2022, they are not going to be able to be considered a disabled adult child under a parent's record, because basically they're saying they can build their own record. They've had substantial gainful amount earnings and now they don't qualify for that. So you do need to be careful with that. The other thing that I should have mentioned in the beginning that is a little bit confusing is when you apply for SSI, you also apply for SSDI, even though the kid doesn't qualify for SSDI. It's just part of the process. And so what they don't tell you when you're going through the process is that you are going to get a letter, and the letters look the same, whether you're getting one for SSI. I mean, it says supplemental security income at the top, and it says Social Security at the top of the other. And that's how you would distinguish it, but it's the same font. It looks like it's from, the same place, and it's confusing. So you got to be careful on the titles of the letter that you're reading. But the first thing that you're going to get is a denial for Social Security disability. And it's basically going to say because your loved one doesn't have enough work credits to apply for SSDI. And a lot of people get very, very upset when they get this letter because their child is clearly disabled and they've been denied, and they feel like they've been denied, like they're saying that the child doesn't have a disability. They're simply saying the child is denied because the child doesn't have any work credits. But what that letter doesn't tell you is that the SSI letter is coming. It might be a few months down the road. They're still considering the SSI application, but that SSDI application for your student was denied, and rightfully so. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that so you don't freak out when you get that first letter. I wish that letter would just say, by the way, the SSI letter will be coming in the future. This is a separate program, but it doesn't say that, and it's very confusing. So again, we've talked about this several times. The disability for childhood disability benefits, the disability had to begin prior to age 22. Maybe you're just hearing this for the first time and you didn't apply because you didn't know, and your child's 24 now. Does that mean he could still qualify for childhood disability benefits? And the answer is yes. It has nothing to do with when you apply. You have to be able to prove that the disability began prior to age 22 and that they have not had substantial gainful employment to be covered for childhood disability benefits. Veronica, do we have another question?
Yes, we have one. It says, is that $1,350 a month a hard line or an average? If in 2 of the last 12 months a child's made $1,600, but for the year they average $1,200 a month, is that person disqualified?
That is a great question, and that's probably to the discretion of the Social Security Administration. I mean, clearly the number is $1,350 gross earnings per month. So the magic number is we don't want them to hit over that. Now, sometimes if, like, for instance, a child was working off the books, like getting 1099 income or something like that, I have seen where the Social Security Administration would take that 1099 income and divide it over 12 months, or take a reduction because the taxes weren't in there. So that would be a specific question for them as far as an average is going to go. But the number that we know for sure is that $1,350 gross per month and $1,470 for 2023. So the Red Book, this is a book that you can download right from the internet through the Social Security Administration. And it's just basically a general reference source about employment-related provisions for Social Security disability insurance and SSI. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have a student working that is getting either SSI or SSDI, you need to read this book. It might be painful, but you do need to read this book. And again, WIPA, Imagine Enterprises, they can help with this as well. But this is going to tell you, what the individual can earn and not mess up their benefits. It's going to explain the two different programs. And if your loved one is getting both, a portion of SSDI and a portion of SSI, then you got to follow both. But that's where these subject matter experts with Imagine Enterprises can help you with that. Another thing is if your loved one is enrolled in vocational rehab, this is a common question that comes up to the VR counselors, and you can pose this question with the VR counselors, and they have subject matter experts that they can get involved with this as well. So you don't have to, do this on your own. But I do recommend that you really look at this because you got to make good choices. Again, do you care if they mess up childhood disability benefits? Some people do, some people don't. And I think where the answer lies is if your loved one truly has the ability to have substantial gainful employment in the future, are you hopeful and optimistic and kind of confident that they're going to be able to support themselves in the future? And I think that's where some of this comes in. Veronica, do we have another question?
Sure, we have. It says, do you need to be approved for SSI before going through process applying for RSDI?
Yeah, you're going to have to be approved for SSI. When you get approved for SSI, the student is labeled disabled. And if they've proved that the kid is disabled prior to age 22, then that's what's going to make them eligible for childhood disability benefits. So that's usually the path forward that you go down. And there might be some one-off, circumstances with that, but generally you go through the SSI process. That whole process that takes 3 to 6 months. They're proving the disability. They're reviewing medical records. There's the disability determination unit that gets all the records and reviews them. They make their decision. They send it back to the local office. The local office contacts you is basically how that works.
Okay, SSI, SSDI, and DAC, CBD are taxable or count as a non-taxable income?
It's usually non-taxable. We don't really give tax advice on here because everybody's situation is a little bit different. And when it comes to Social Security, retirement earnings, it totally depends on household income and those types of things. But typically, the SSI is not taxable. But when it comes into Social Security, retirement, and other household income coming in, then a portion of it can indeed be taxable. And there's some good information on the Social Security website about the taxability of it and kind of how that works.
We have another that's long. My 21-year-old is receiving the reduced amount. To receive the full amount, do we need a special rent agreement? Where do we get it? How much do we charge? Are we then required to claim his rent payments as income in our taxes?
So the general consensus is you can have a rent or a fair share agreement. So we have a template for that. You can email us and we'll send that out. We have a template for the rent agreement. And the tax question, again, we recommend that would be posed to a tax, advisor or a CPA. In general, in the past, when we've had webinars with Andy Hardwick with the Social Security Administration, he basically said you can charge rent or a fair share. Okay, I chose to do rent because it was easier. I chose $500 a month. Okay, so each time the SSI comes in, then I move $500 a month from the SSI account to my account. What you choose to do with it after that is up to you. If you want to turn right around and take that $500 and put it into an ABLE account for your child, you absolutely can. And as far as the taxability is concerned, what Andy Hardwick said in the past, again, he's not a CPA. We're not CPAs. We don't play one on TV. So do ask your tax professional. I've asked several tax professionals. I get different answers. But basically, if you're charging rent, then technically, yes, you would put that on your taxes. If you're charging your child the fair share, then you would not have to report that on the taxes. That was the general consensus before. And what a fair share is, so in some examples, the fair share is just too much, right? Like it would be more than what they would get in SSI. So to me, the rent was just easier to do that. If you're going to do the fair share, then you're going to have to prove your mortgage or your rent. You're going to have to prove your utilities and your average grocery bills. You're going to have to average all that together. And then you're going to have to be able to provide proof of that in writing to the Social Security Administration. And then you add those three things together: food, the housing, and the utilities, divided by the number of people in the household. So if you have a large number of people in the house, or you have low expenses or things like that, then going the fair share route might be a good route to go. So when it comes to protecting your kids' benefits, we want to make sure that you have your assets and your child's assets in the appropriate buckets. You always want to ensure, if you've attended webinars with us in the past, you've probably heard me say this a million times. You could say this for me. But you want to ensure that your special needs family member's name is not set up as a beneficiary on any life insurance, investment, or bank accounts. And so if you're taking notes, write this down: check my beneficiaries. I want you to check your primary beneficiaries and your contingent or secondary beneficiaries, because a lot of people make their spouse the beneficiary, and then if the spouse is, gone, then they say, okay, well, what the beneficiary, we'll divide it equally amongst our kids. Number one, you should not name minor children as beneficiaries on anything, because that money sits in trust until they're 18, and when they're 18, they're going to get all the money. It's a bad idea. Okay, so for our kids that have disabilities and are getting SSI and Medicaid, we don't want to name them specifically, because if we do, that's going to make them be over the $2,000 limit. They're going to lose their SSI and their Medicaid eligibility. And if they lose their Medicaid eligibility, they will also lose their waiver if they're getting one, or their eligibility for future waivers if they're not Medicaid qualified. So you want to also ensure that well-meaning family members, these are usually grandma and grandpa, that they don't leave assets to the named individual, as opposed to a third-party special needs trust. A third-party special needs trust would be set up for the benefit of your loved one with a disability, and this is a place they can have money that will not be counted against them for Medicaid purposes. So that's the right way to go about doing it. If a family member accidentally, or someone accidentally, leaves your child money and you didn't know about it, there is a such thing as a first-party special needs trust. You'll have to hire an attorney. They'll set up a first-party special needs trust. There is a Medicaid payback on that. They'll get the money moved to that first-party special needs trust. It's better to set it up correctly on the front end. To a third-party special needs trust. Guys, we have entire webinars. I know you start talking about trust and all this stuff, it starts getting confusing. We have entire webinars on third-party and first-party trust, the differences of them, and kind of how they all work, okay? So we want to make sure that their money is in the right buckets. So you're going to want to establish a special needs trust for their future care. A special needs trust can have an unlimited amount of money. A third-party special needs trust, a lot of times these special needs trusts are funded with life insurance. So if mom or dad dies, the life insurance proceeds go to fund the special needs trust. So that is one way to fund it. Of course, a person can be independently wealthy. Sometimes they fund it with leftover money after retirement, upon death, and things like that. And then the ABLE account is another place that we can have money above and beyond the $2,000 allowed for the means-based test for Medicaid. So for an ABLE account, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide, because this one's a little bit more clear. An ABLE account is under the 529A tax code for ABLE. It came about in 2014. This is for an individual whose disability started prior to age 26, is subject to the gift tax amount exclusion each year. For 2022, it's $16,000. For 2023, it's $17,000. But the ABLE account, they can have up to $100,000 and not disqualify from basically SSI and Medicaid. So an ABLE account will allow them to have money above and beyond the $2,000 and pay for such things as food and shelter. You can pay for food and shelter out of an ABLE account without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. The ABLE account is cool because it grows tax-free withdrawals as long as it's a qualified disability expense. And the term qualified disability expense is pretty broad. So if it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with a disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. Again, we have entire presentations on the ABLE account and how that all works. We help people set ABLE accounts up all the time. So just know that just like a first party special needs trust, there's a Medicaid payback. There is a Medicaid payback and an ABLE account as well. So upon the death of the individual with a disability, they'll do a look back of what has Medicaid paid, and there will be a Medicaid payback on that. And there's more information on a Medicaid payback or clawback or drawback. I've heard them all called that. And it's kind of clear as mud, but it kind of goes through the calculations of what they do and how a Medicaid payback is calculated. Okay, Veronica, are we in a good spot for questions?
We have 5 minutes. Yes, we have some questions. Why could you just charge rent equal to the benefit? It's about when we charging $500 for.
It's just not necessary. You're just wanting to get the full amount for the SSI, so $500 is enough.
Sometimes it's $500 for the rent, including, electricity and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I just said it included everything. The same amount we would charge any boarder.
Got it. My attorney set up special needs trusts for my special needs daughter, but those are in documents. How it works? Should I need to open a bank account?
You can. You absolutely can. Some people have never done that. You just need the EIN number to open up a bank account. So a lot of people do that, and it just depends on what money is coming in and having things set up, because the account is basically where the money would go, and you would be able to set up a special needs trust account with those documents. So I'm going to move on. These are things that an ABLE account can pay for. This is, again, it can pay for food and shelter without a 1/3 reduction to SSI. These are items that a special needs trust can pay for. And the list is just as long with the ABLE account. The main thing you got to know is in the special needs trust, if you pay for food and shelter, SSI is designed to pay for food and shelter. So if you pay for food and shelter out of a special needs trust, there is going to be a 1/3 reduction to SSI. So, when it comes to planning, we always say, we want to help you plan. You need to have a future care plan in place. When it comes to planning, what are those future care cost estimates for your loved one? Consider touring facilities for partial day hab, transition programs, whatever. Sometimes these waiting lists can be long. So consider touring things. And the thing is, whether your kid's staying in school to 18 or 21 or 22, what we're trying to avoid is that they're coming home and they're doing nothing, right? So, plan early. We always just say plan early, and always make careful considerations before we name siblings as a future caregiver. That's not always the wisest thing to do. We've talked about a lot of topics, and just so you know, like I said, any topic that we've talked about today that we touched on, there's an entire webinar on our YouTube channel on that specific topic. So if you needed to go deeper, you can go out there. You're going to get this link for our upcoming webinars, and you can register for any of our upcoming webinars that we've got coming up as well. These are some examples of some of the topics that are going to be out there on our YouTube channel. There's over 200 webinars on our YouTube channel. So Consolidated Planning Group, YouTube, you can find it. It's in the chat box as well, and it'll be in the slides that we're going to send over to you. I always take a moment to put some faces with names with the people on my awesome team. I have an awesome team. We work collaboratively, at CPG. I know that Michelle has done some webinars with you, Veronica, in the past, but always just like to have some faces with names. And we offer free consultations. You guys have asked great questions today, and some of them are probably deeper and wider than what we can, handle on, on a webinar. But certainly reach out. We offer free initial consultations and to kind of talk to you a little bit more about some of the questions that you have, share a little bit more about who we are, how we work, that kind of thing. So you can certainly use this link, and it'll take you to a calendar, and you can schedule a personalized consultation with us. So happy to meet with you there. I think we're about out of time, but let's take those last two questions.
Two questions. Do you have a template to set to family members to help protect our child's benefits? Templates. Well, we are going to send the slides of today. That's one part of that.
I know what somebody just said. I'm not sure what you need. We are going to send the slides today. I was required to set up a SSI payment account as a representative payee.
Yeah.
That's good. That is good, and you should do that. Also, if you are a representative payee for someone, one thing that I do recommend is that you name a successor representative payee, because what I have seen is that there is a debacle. Like if you as mom or dad or whoever is the representative payee and they die, then the SSI benefits get locked up until they get that mess worked out, and it is a slow process. So having a backup representative payee is a smart thing to do, and you can ask your local Social Security office about that. You can probably Google and find the form online. There's a form for it, but I definitely recommend that you do that. We've heard some real nightmare stories about that.
Well,
any other questions?
I think time's up. It's already 1:01. So thank you so much, guys, for being here with us. And we will send an email with the information of today's presentation. Thank you, Allison. And please contact her, make an appointment. It's a free consultation. So please do that. All right.
Thanks so much. Have a good one. Take care. Bye now.
Bye.